Welcome everybody to our webinar from the Roundtable for a Customer Revolution. This is Jeff Ernst. Glad to have you here today. Just a little bit about me. I've been doing strategic programs for customer programs for about 30 plus years, I hate to admit, but and then I was also the analyst at Forrester covering B2B customer engagement strategies, where I was advising our clients on how to better mobilize their customers to drive growth, and then actually built the Forrester Frontlines program that was their first ever global customer engagement program that just totally transformed how we were doing our sales and marketing and customer success work at Forrester. So, and then I'm also being joined here by Bill Lee. Bill is the thought leader in customer marketing and advocacy. Bill, why don't I turn it over to you to do a quick intro?
All righty, thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon for some of you. I am Bill Lee. I've been in this field for about 20 years. I am credited by folks such as, most recently, the Customer Catalyst as the pioneer in the space, creating the categories of customer advocacy and engagement and the metric return on relationship. And I built a global community around these concepts, including some of the top logos in the world: Microsoft, Apple, Marketo, HubSpot, Amazon Web Services, and so forth. I've got dozens of people who have used our research services, advisory services, and also educational offerings, been widely published in Harvard Business Review, and so forth and so on. Happy to send you a fuller bio if you'd like, but for now, let's get on with the show here. We're here to talk about driving customer-led growth in your firm, how to be a cathedral builder. And we're going to start by unpacking that. What does all this mean? We don't mean, when we say customer-led growth, things like better use cases or supporting sales better or aligning with marketing objectives and so forth. That's not what we're about. By customer-led growth, here is a nice, simple, clean definition for you. It's about engaging your best customers to crush C-level growth objectives, particularly objectives that they're struggling with. And in doing an analysis of what we're talking about here, it starts with CEO objectives. For example, here's what we call a crush list. This is going to give you a few quick examples here of what we're talking about. So here's a list of common C-level objectives. Probably 2 or 3 of these, maybe more, are top of mind at your firm. And it's about, okay, if we're not getting traction with these objectives, why is that? And could our customers get some traction for us? For example, here's how customers can address these examples of this. OnePlus, their customer community, co-created and evangelized their first go-to-market smartphone called the OnePlus One. The result was the customer community, again, co-created these phones and evangelized them. That was their marketing. Result in the first year revenue of $330 million with minimal marketing spend. Acquisition, early, it's not well known, or as well known as it should be, early Salesforce customers closed 80% of prospects at their live events. This was Mark Benioff's doing, the great salesman. And this required no sales pitch, just prospects having conversations with customers, 80% in effect close rates. SaaS Canada, this is one of the famous in our community. Wally Thiessen, who was head of customer advocacy, they were having a serious problem with retention. It got all the way up to the head of their division, and they were planning a big marketing campaign. Was considered. Wally got together his customer champions. There's 50 of them who fully restored these seriously declining retention rates from the mid 80s back up to the mid 90s. I'll give you one more. Share, market share. Zoom. Everybody loves Zoom. We're on Zoom right now. Natural customer advocates. launched Zoom's incredible market share growth from zero to market share dominance, with no marketing spend for the first 2 years, and so forth and so on. So we're going to start out by talking about why this is now the time for customer-led growth to take center stage. And with that, I'm going to give this back to Jeff, who's going to be talking about the current crisis that is highly relevant to this. Jeff, take it away.
Yeah. Thanks, Bill. And those of you that know me know that I'm not a doom and gloom guy, but I also want you to know what's going on in the CEO and C-level conversations that I'm having every week. And Bill, if you could go to the next slide. This is what they are reading, and this is what your board members are reading, and this is what's causing them to be thinking about how they should best prepare your companies for a potential recession. And so these are just this week's headlines in the Wall Street Journal about a rising risk of recession creates a new headache for Biden. New York Times, global growth will be choked amid inflation and war. So this is a real situation that's going on right now. And in those C-level conversations that I'm having, they're talking about, okay, what are the things we should do to prep for this high possibility? And some companies, like Salesforce, has really cut drastically back on their regional events because that's one thing that they feel is discretionary that they could be doing. And the fact is, though, is that whenever there's even a threat of a recession and companies start to batten down the hatches, the jobs that go first are the jobs that don't drive revenue, the jobs that these executives think that we can do without. And Bill, if we can go to the next slide, and so another part of the crisis that we're in is this recognition that traditional B2B sales and marketing are becoming obsolete. And Brent Adamson is from CEC. He was from the acquired by Gartner, very forward thought leader and thinker, and wrote in Harvard Business Review just in February about this notion that traditional B2B sales and marketing becoming obsolete. And what he's advising, and one more click, Bill, what he's advising is that we're beyond the point of just trying to fix sales and marketing integration or alignment. That's past. Today, what we need to do is fix that broken alignment between how we sell and how our buyers buy. And when we say buy, we mean even when they're existing customers, because we know across every stage of the customer lifecycle, when anybody is in buyer mode and has to make a decision, they want to hear from what your other customers have to say. So this is real. And going on one more, and yes, BT. What we're not talking about here, as Bill mentioned at the beginning, what you see on this screen are just the table stakes, right? These are some things you have to do, but this is not what we're talking about to move the needle. We're not just talking about writing more case studies or more detailed case studies or things like that. We're not just talking about better responding to endless reference requests or running NPS surveys or putting happy quotes on our website. So we have to do some of these things, but we also have to move beyond these things to the truly direct revenue impacting types of initiatives that we're going to be talking about in this webinar. And just to give you a quick story, I know several of us were at an event in California, a customer marketing and advocacy event 2 weeks ago, and there were a lot of presentations by pretty big companies that were talking about their programs, and only one of those big presentations really focused on revenue or influencing revenue. And the focus and advice from that speaker was all about being more proactive with your sales team to understand what's in their pipeline so that you can start to be recommending potential references to serve that. So we're not even talking about that. Even though that's a great strategy, we're taking it one step further to really, truly embracing customer-led growth and how to mobilize your customers to drive those strategic growth initiatives that are most important to your C-level executives. So Bill, let me turn it back to you and talk about the opportunity that we have in front of us right now.
All righty, thanks, Jeff. So I get to bring good news. I guess I got the long straw in this one. We're going to talk about for a few minutes why the 2020s is the decade of customer-led growth. Kind of like, a lot like the 2010s was a decade of customer success. And for those of you who are not familiar with some of the numbers here, 8 years ago today, there were maybe 500 customer success managers in all the world. Today, well, at the end of 2021, there are 250,000 customer success managers out there. It's a booming profession, maybe as much as any profession short of technology or AI and so forth in the tech world. The potential for this decade for customer-led growth, for people who do customer marketing, which Jeff and I both hate that. We're going to come clean here. We hate that term. We don't think it's descriptive of what you do at all and what you potentially can do. But anyway, I digress. So what is it? What is it that what is the opportunity here? How do we describe this? So why is this the 2020s the decade of customer-led growth? So for the last couple of years, Jeff and I have been engaged in deep conversations and research with some of the most progressive, successful senior executives, board directors, investors, thought leaders, and so forth. And much of that, we call it the roundtable for a customer revolution. Most of that was about what we're calling customer-led growth, how customers can be doing more to grow our business profitably in ways that the usual, marketing and sales and so forth aren't getting done these days. That was a discussion, and we got into depth about how leaders like this think about what you do, what they want from customer-led growth, what they want from you, how to position what you do, your job, your career in ways that will fascinate and excite them. That's what we got into in some depth with these folks. And we've got 9 or 10 hours of transcripts with our original roundtable. These folks here. We've done something like 8 webinars so far. Brent Adamson, who Jeff just talked about, he's going to be with us in September. We've had Fred Reichel, other great thought leaders, and so forth. And this just a couple of weeks ago, it's been 4 or 6 weeks ago, we had our first beta roundtable with CEOs. It's hard to get these folks together. We had fairly strong interest in this. It was tough to get people to get together, but we did get 3 outstanding CEOs together. And we're going to give you a little treat. We're going to have actually a little video on how they are responding to the sorts of things that we're talking about here with customer-led growth. So let's go back to Brent Adamson's. That'll be kind of a launching point. The usual approaches aren't working, and it's not going to get better when the millennials start taking over, as they are starting to do. It's not going to get any better. So I'm going to share 3 big insights from these thought leaders and senior executives. And here's the first one from Nick Maynard. Nick Maynard, CEO of Gainsight, Mr. Customer Success. He was behind, very much part of this explosion of customer success as a profession. And here's what he has to say about customer-led growth. At difficult decisions in the customer journey, pre-sale and post, customers want to hear most from other customers like them. You might think, well, at least in the post-sale, they would most want to hear from one of my customer success managers. But no, that's not the case. Nick realizes, as many people, many senior executives realize, as Jeff just said earlier, they want to hear from a peer. They want to hear from another customer like them. And that's throughout the customer journey. That's a huge segue into what you do, because basically what you folks do is you connect your best customers with other customers and with prospects with certain key people in your firm and so forth. That's your job. Here's one from the creator of Net Promoter Score, which I would imagine most, if not all of you, your firms use this. Net Promoter Score, it's a whole industry, and they have spent 20 years, being frank here, of ignoring their promoters. They have been chasing detractors and neutrals. That's who they chase to turn them into promoters and to get that magic number higher. And so we invited Fred to be on one of our webinars, and in the pre meeting that we had with Fred, we pointed this out with him. Why have you all always ignored promoters? Let me show you. Let us, Jeff and I were both on this. Let us show you what promoters can do to crush growth goals. So we showed him that a version of that crush list we showed you earlier. And he said, I want to think about this some more. And then we had a second pre-meeting that supposed to last 20 minutes. It lasted 45 minutes. And he was fascinated by this whole concept. Kind of amazing that Net Promoter people have never really thought about that. This is quite a resource you've created. Anyway, so here's what he said at our webinar itself. One of the most important areas for improving Net Promoter today is to rally your promoters. And by rally, of course, he means mobilizing, he means getting them doing the things that customer-led growth initiatives do. That's coming from the most influential person in the world, maybe when it comes to customers, certainly when it comes to Net Promoter Score. And then I want to share a quick, this is about a 2.5 minute video of the beta roundtable we did with CEOs. These are people who didn't know me. They knew me by reputation. I was introduced by Chris Adlard at the Customer Catalyst. Here's how they responded to a crush list. So here's what I mean by the immense potential to grow the business. Here's a list, critical growth objectives. So this is a list I showed you earlier. We'll just do one or two here, and then we're going to go right into their reaction to this. Probably you all have at least one or two of these. Here's how here's what I mean by customers crushing these kinds of objectives. So go to market, OnePlus, their first phone, when they first launched the OnePlus One, they formed a community. They co-created the first phone, they evangelized it, result first year revenue of $330 million with minimal marketing cost. Acquisition, Salesforce customers, quote, closed, unquote, 80% of prospects who attended their live events. No sales pitch required. All right, let's skip ahead now.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say about kind of co-creation and co-innovation with customers, thinking about customers as a way to help actually actively crush growth objectives. I can think of a real example in our business where that started to happen. You know, we recently bought from one of our customers a technology platform that they had developed, and we are now sort of scaling it up for use with our customer base more broadly. The process of doing that has also caused us to think about how we collaborate with them in the future, you know, to continue to kind of innovate together. So the concept you raised, Bill, of like seeing the customers as a kind of partner in that ultimate goal is a great way of thinking about it.
Starting up a new side of our business with a new customer target group, which is the fleet group. So instead of going through the traditional approach of, right, we've got to hire, you know, a fantastic business development team, we've got to spend millions on marketing, actually, can we kind of follow the tracks of some of the companies you mentioned earlier, Bill, in still achieving that growth, but just through a different means?
So the takeaway from that is that with Tom was they had stumbled onto a customer who had developed this software that was very useful to their software platform. They bought it. Now, as a result of hearing that, he's thinking systematically, can we do this again? This opens their eyes to this, that can we do this again? That has huge implications. And then, of course, with Johnny, I'll let what he said speak for itself. He likes the idea of not shelling out all this money for his marketing and sales, which isn't getting traction like in the old days, and he's wide open, trying something different. So, how are we doing? Why don't we pause here for a few minutes? And for those of you who are in the audience here, I'd like to hear your comments. In fact, I'd like to find my chat. There we go. And feel free. Dana's with us. She can sort of curate these for us, and we'd be interested in getting your thoughts on this. What do you think of this approach to customer-led growth? Is this something that would it excite you to have a job that where you are now working directly with the C-suite and you are working on realizing untapped potential that your customers have? And my observation over the years, and during this project we've been on, most firms aren't coming close to realizing this huge potential. It's just sitting there waiting to be tapped. Any thoughts? Don't be shy.
Yeah, and feel free to come off of mute if you don't want to put it into the chat. You all have mic access as well.
Hi, it's Maria Sturgeon with Teradata.
Hey, Maria.
Hi there. So great slides so far. I really like the one where you guys talked about the CEO objectives. So I think it's totally imperative to work with the CEO and leadership team to basically drive growth with your customer advocacy program. Tomorrow's my last day with Teradata. I'm moving to a new company on Monday. So that's
Awesome.
why I'm most interested in this in my new role too, and showing them the value of what customer advocates can communicate. Because as you mentioned, there's so much focus on customer stories, quotes, things of that nature, but you really need to assess whether or not those are really driving revenue. And I think really it's more of the aligning with the objectives and getting your advocates to really preach your story and sharing with their peers.
Yes, thanks, Maria.
Maria, that's great. And I know you're going to a new job, but even can you think of an example now that you're cutting the cord from your prior job? I mean, an example where that this could apply, like a particular
Sure.
C-level initiative.
Yeah.
That, like in hindsight, you said, maybe I could have attached myself to that and helped drive that.
Sure. So one of the huge things we've been doing, we've always had done a very, I would say, great job around doing it as the group reference calls, and now we're calling them roundtables. But it's really around the go-to-market example and market share, and it's basically looking at all the pipeline within our sales force and our opportunities, and really targeting very focused discussions around our best customer advocates and making sure we're using them the right way. So we're having these smaller engaging calls, and then sometimes we do invite analysts and partners to attend as well. And then we funnel that up to our leadership team to tell them, like, this call is now completed. This is the potential for the pipeline and new customers. And then when we actually close the deals too, we funnel that up as well. So they see that. It's everyone, not just a CEO. It's really mostly all of the leadership team, CRO, CFO, et cetera, who are exposed to really what this program is all about. So I'm excited to hopefully implement some new things in my position going forward. And I think the other thing we've been really great about doing, and I'm kind of bummed that Teradata made the decision, we're not doing our big event this year, our 4-day event, we're doing smaller events. So I hope that works well for them. But like really when you are at the face-to-face events, and Jeff, I'm actually speaking at this Lat 5 conference, is really how to amplify your advocacy. We've always been great in doing that because I think we have a great advocate community. And I was just on a discussion this morning with my customer Barclays. I was telling him goodbye because he's been one of my best advocates. And we were discussing the value of face-to-face events. And he's like, people don't come to these events for the content, a lot of them. They come to events, the corporation events, because they want to network with people and learn from their peers. And that really drives that. So we were talking about the importance of networking and what we have done at those events in terms of like the smaller roundtables, having space that accommodates all this networking activity, whether it's planned prior or on site. And unfortunately, with budgets getting cut too, it's hard because I think a lot of companies are trying to figure out still how to pivot from COVID. And I haven't seen many of our customers since October 2019, except online. So it's how to take that dynamic and kind of replicate it if you can virtually, and hopefully get back to the face-to-face world, as I know many of us are doing. So I'm looking forward to actually seeing people in person soon. I hope.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point, and it is a hard problem. I'd suggest a couple of things that we're finding here that might be helpful. It's not about really networking per se. It's about letting customers and other customers, with your best customers, just having conversations, customer to customer, customer to prospect, and so forth. And also, it's one thing that's been a mind blower here is that you can start your analysis not with the things you think your customers can do. There may be, where you start is over here. If you want to see my slide here, you start over here with your CEO's top objectives. Start with, if it's go to market, start there. If it's acquisition, if it's retention, whatever, start with that and say, how is the CEO, how does she feel that we're doing with respect to achieving that objective? And if we're not getting traction with it, how can our customers help with it? And very often the answer is super simple. It's simply about putting customers together with other customers. That's your job, and it's hugely powerful.
And if I could give one example, because I want to see, it's such an important point that Bill just made about starting with that objective and drilling down versus starting with your current workload and trying to funnel up, the impact that it's having. I'm not saying that's not important, but what we're really talking about with customer-led growth is starting with that C-level objective. And just a quick example, when I was doing that at Forrester, when I was asked to move from being an analyst to running marketing, and I met with the CEO and the board, and they told us our number one problem in the market that we have to conquer is the fact that we are losing market share to Gartner. And so, Gartner was growing at 20% a year and Forrester wasn't growing enough. And they challenged me with how to better compete with Gartner. And so when I did some research in the market to understand how we could do that, what I realized is that we were never going to knock Gartner out. The only thing we could do was to coexist with Gartner. And so what we did is we realized what we have to do is have our customers tell us their stories about why, what types of initiatives they were doing with Forrester's help that they wouldn't do with Gartner, or what was the incremental value they were getting from Forrester above and beyond Gartner. And so that was directly tied to a board and C-level mandate that I figured out the strategy, and then we mobilized our customers to do that and captured these great insights that we then put into the hands of sales reps that said things to me like, Jeff, this is the best thing I've ever gotten from marketing here or anywhere else I've ever worked, because it does the selling for me. It just crushes that objection that we always get around, I've already spent X millions of dollars a year with Gartner. Why do I need a second opinion, right? And so given sort of Bill's reframing and my example, can anybody think of a C-level initiative in your company right now that is either talked about at a quarterly company meeting or that's talked about on an earnings call by your CEO that you see a potential to jump in and design a special way of engaging your customers to drive that initiative?
Hey, Jeff and everybody. Bill, this is Allison.
Hey, Allison.
Hey, I agree with all of these objectives. And I think, Jeff, what you were asking is there anything maybe different that we're hearing from our, C-suite? And one thing that isn't here that I've kind of glommed onto, and I've heard from the past couple of CEOs that I've had, is also culture. And that one in a variety of different ways, right? Like they're very focused internally on culture, but I think they're also interested in how the culture is presented outward to customers. And it's really interesting for me, how can we have a customer-centric culture reflected both internally within an organization, but then also to customers? And I think getting them engaged in a lot of different things, it's easy. Like it's hard. We all know it's hard, but it's simple in concept. So it's something that I've tried to kind of do on the side of my desk, is this customer-centric culture. I know it's not on the list here, but I've certainly heard it mentioned.
But if you can tie that to the growth goals and success goals of your company, that's great. So if you can say that by projecting that type of culture, it's making us a company that
100%.
They want to. It's an impression of a company that they want to do business with, right? They want to be associated with. Right?
Exactly, and that's where this whole creating connections with customers thing comes in. And I think I've chatted a little bit about it. I think some of it is also just turning things on their head from a naming conventions perspective. Like it's not a reference call anymore, right? This is a peer-to-peer conversation. These are connections, just putting customers together. And when they see that and they believe it, that's the other piece of it, that they believe it. That's where then I think there's a cultural shift. So just something that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is Maria again. I was just gonna make one more comment, and that's a great point, Allison, because another thing I think people forget, especially around that innovation piece of it, is so often we take our advocates and we focus on new logos and connecting them with prospects only. But we found that some of our most powerful connections are getting to kind of customers, dynamic customers, and they learn from one another and they realize what they can do to expand, expansions and upgrades with Teradata. And it really drives their whole innovation. And they learn what other companies are doing and they say, oh my gosh, we need to do this because we need to, leave this value. And I think, that's often missed.
Totally agree, Maria. I got to sit in the CS org my last go around building out advocacy, and it was a completely different experience than say sitting within, marketing. But I think too that having that seat at the table with the C-suite and, showing the value and all of that stuff too. But I hear a lot of times from customer marketers or advocacy professionals is that they struggle to have them understand and get them. And I know, or at least I hope, this is why I was excited about this, because it's honing in on that language, and because we all know we're valuable, but raising it up.
Well, that's a good point, Allison. I want to amplify that. If your initiative isn't perceived as valuable by your CEO, that's your problem. And if you look at these crush examples here, and we got dozens of these are just examples. But if you look at them, there's absolutely no doubt that these customers at these firms were engaged in such a way that they were not just meeting, but they were crushing these objectives. Nobody was going around and saying, well, what exactly did our customer marketers, whoever it was that organized these communities and so forth at OnePlus, in the events at Salesforce and so forth, whatever they're called, doesn't matter. They're seeing those kinds of close rates with prospects or in some of these others here. There's no doubt. So, well, I think that this profession, one of the kind of mind shifts that they need is if we're struggling to establish our value to our C-suite, maybe we ought to try something different where it's totally obvious, because that potential is there for you. My 2 cents.
Okay, I'm going to add 2 cents if I could.
Go for it, BT.
I'm
Well,
focusing on scalability and sustainability, which ties in a lot of these objectives for retention. It's all about scalability on that retention and sustaining. And this comes with referrals. This comes with depth and breadth of engagement in an account. It's I think I could easily tie different activities that are going on within the customer advocacy program that's being built out to these CEO objectives, and these are spot on. May not be the same words you're using here, but it's the same intent and meaning and the ultimate outcome, I think.
Yeah, and if I could just add, so another way to sort of narrow the aperture of what we're talking about here too, is that within any company at any one point in time at the C level, there's usually 2 to 3 tops most important growth initiatives that they're going to be talking about with the board, and that they're going to be talking about for public companies on those earning calls, and that there's going to be an executive who's responsible for executing that cross-function and who will be held accountable. And so that's, again, it's almost by default that every company cares about retention, especially every SaaS company. But you know, we want to take it even one step further, because customer-led growth and being a cathedral builder, which Bill talked about at the beginning as well, really means picking one or two or whatever of those top 2 or 3 things that the whole company is focused on for the next quarter or two. Right, versus just sort of the ongoing stuff. Yeah, we all know we need to acquire new customers. We all need to retain them. We want to engage them, and so I just wanted to see if that rings a bell for anybody. Like, can you think of like the thing that is talked about, that there's an executive whose neck is on the line to make it happen, and it might even have a project name in your company right now. I mean, like, you know, a code name, right? Project. What do you call, whatever, you know,
Lighthouse.
Lighthouse, yeah.
Can you guys, Jeff, can you hear me? I don't know if I'm being heard here.
Hey, Chris.
Yes,
Hi.
Chris, yes, we can.
Yeah, so firstly, thank you so much. This has been an absolutely brilliant webinar, Bill and Jeff, and all the comments that people have raised. So it's been great to be part of it. I've got lots of examples in my career where, you know, it's clear what the business objectives are, and then we link all the customer related activities to it. I think maybe what would help the people on this call is to almost think about themselves as the next chief customer officer. And what I mean by that is not just think about the advocacy initiatives that we traditionally would do within this community, but think about also, and people touched on it earlier, culture. So culture, for example, means working with HR to look at the change programs we're doing to make goals customer-centric for different functions. It could be working with the customer experience team, you know, to look at mapping out the journeys that the customer have and how we improve them. Or it could be, for example, closely working with customer success to make sure that, you know, we understand what they do in their day-to-day conversations to stop them attriting the clients, right? So in driving that retention. So what I'm trying to say here is that when this team here have those conversations with the CEO, they need to be able to show that they understand the other elements of customer-led growth that fit outside of the traditional advocacy activities. In my view, I think advocacy alone is an absolutely critical part of this, but it's not the only one. And so, you know, I just leave that, you know, with people on this call to think about. And, you know, is there anything they could do outside of their day job, to your point, Bill and Jeff, that would almost augment their value proposition internally within the organizations they work?
Yeah, such a great point, Chris. Yeah.
Thanks for that input, Chris. I would just say, you and I have had this discussion before. I think you've done a brilliant job with your book, with the Customer Catalyst Initiative and so forth. I think it's brilliant and very, very, very comprehensive and so forth. But I'd go back to Chris, to Jeff's point that I agree with, and that is you can only pick 1 or 2 dragons to slay. And if you try to take on too much, you're going to get, it's not going to work. You have to pick your dragons to slay, and the most eye-catching dragon to all the C-level executives we've talked to, and all the research that we've done on this is to show that you've got the chops to move the needle on our financial objectives. And if you have to argue about it, or you have to make the case, if it's not clear to us, you didn't do it. It's a high bar to do, but it's possible. It is possible, and it's more possible for customer marketing in its broadest sense to do this than any other organization, than any other function in your organization. Marketing can't do this anymore. Sales can't do it anymore. There's all kinds of problems with those models now. Your best customers are the ones that can move the financial needle. It's just a matter of learning how to do it, and it's frankly not that hard. It just requires a different mindset. So,
Bill, if in the interest of time, I'm wondering if we should focus on the Cathedral Builders right now.
Why don't we? And why don't we talk about our exciting initiative? You want to start that?
You want me to?
Or do you want me to? I can do it.
Well, I'll just frame sort of some of the impetus of what we want to share with you now is an exciting new program that Bill and I are putting together for Cathedral Builders, because. And Bill came up with this term, or Bill, I don't know what inspired it. It was probably from some of your massive amount of reading that you do, because you're so smart that way. But if you think about it, what I think of as in any field, but especially in customer marketing, a cathedral builder is somebody that has this grand vision of building something beautiful and lasting and sustainable that impacts a lot of people, and again, it leaves an enduring legacy wherever they go. And we're talking about driving strategic growth initiatives of your company, versus the other aspect, which would be a bricklayer, is just sort of somebody that waits for the next request, or waits for the next ask, or the next to be told what to do next. And so we're making that big distinction between what is a cathedral builder versus a bricklayer. And I believe from experience and conversations that way too many customer programs are being run by people that are operating in that bricklayer mode. And we want to elevate the profession. And the key way to elevate the profession is both to help develop people that are already in the profession to become cathedral builders, as well as attract high caliber people into the profession, just like what happened in the customer success world. Right, in the customer success world, the first group of people that joined came from customer service and customer support, and then because it was looked at as just an extension of customer service. But then, Gainsight played a role in this, as did the other vendors, and as well as some thought leaders in the space. We started to attract very strategic people into the customer success field. So now it's one of the most important functions in a company, and we need to make the same thing happen with what we're currently calling customer marketing, to turn customer marketing into the customer-led growth function. That's just my take on it, Bill. I wonder if you want to jump in and talk more about the Cathedral Builders program.
That was great. I thought it was great. The simple version that I'm using now. Can you all see my crush sheet there on your screens? Are you seeing that, Jeff?
Yeah, it's there. It's just not in play mode.
Let's go ahead and put it back.
Perfect.
All right, so this process here, you start with the objectives, the most important, the number 1, 2, or 3 most important objectives in your C-suite, and then you figure out how can we get our customers to crush this. So a cathedral builder is somebody who would love the idea of doing that, right? Instead of all the other stuff that gets thrown on their plate that really has no, significant impact on the business. They want to do stuff that has impact that's worthy of these customers that you develop relationships with. That's what a cathedral builder is. By the way, it's something that comes from Peter Drucker, back from the old Peter Drucker playbook. It's getting it's actually an old parable, but anyway. So what Jeff and I are working on now, we've done betas for CEOs, we've done roundtables for senior executives and so forth, webinars and so forth. We are now thinking of a roundtable for cathedral builders, or we might call it just roundtable for customer-led growth. And what we have in mind for this is that it would look something like this. Take the people, the cathedral builders out there who would love to develop the skill of doing this. We think it's the most important one in the 2020s, in this decade, and to really become masters at that, and who want to be in a position to realize the full potential of their customers, to grow the business and to make an impact that the C-level and the CEO goes, we could not do without this. So what we're thinking of, here's what we're thinking. This is something that we're going to co-create, kind of like Johnny Chambe talked about in one of the clips. We realize this is a co-creation thing. We want to find folks like that who really are bought into this and want to do something about this. We're thinking of 4 months, meeting once a week, the first month to select and socialize, so to speak, the objectives that you're going to go with, that you're going to pursue, and then the last 3 months of implementing an initiative to crush said objective. There's going to be homework. We're thinking homework is going to be essential as you find out and settle on which objective or objectives you go after. We're thinking it's a good idea to have your C-level executive sponsor involved in this roundtable and participating in it. And of course, you'll have, throughout these 4 months, you'll have a peer group of other cathedral builders like you, plus Jeff and me, supporting you in this journey. And the outcome is not only to really move the needle on an important objective that the C-suite has been struggling with. It's developing a process so that you can do that again and again with your customers and start reorienting them away from these initiatives that have doubtful or not clear impacts on the business, to get rid of those and to start working with these customers to knock down the most important objectives in your firm. So that's kind of the vision. As I said, we'll work with, and we want to make this a co-creation effort with our first group. We're thinking 8 to 12 people, and that's what we're looking to do. If that's something that sounds interesting, then please do. Send us a note. If you just want more information, if you're still kind of wondering, or, I sent some people on the fence, happy to talk to you about this, because this definitely has elements of changing the way you do business. But we think it's appropriate with all that's going on these days in business. Any other thoughts, Jeffrey?
Yeah, if I could just add, Bill, just to reinforce what Bill said, is we want to co-create this. So we're really looking for like that beta group that wants to be the charter members, the first cohort to go through this program and to benefit from it. And there's a lot of benefits to you from doing that. One is just, job survival, right? By doing this, you're going to have a much better chance of surviving the recession. But if you go up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's also the benefit of, many of you have heard me talk about the 3 R's of customer marketing, right? It's not references and referrals and blah, blah, blah. It's respect, recognition, and resources. And so the struggle and battle for resources is going to be even greater. And by focusing on initiatives like this, you're going to be much better prepared and armed with ammunition and data and results that's going to help you get those resources. And then also from kind of the top of Maslow's hierarchy, this is going to help you really be positioned as a thought leader, a leader in this customer-led growth world. And being as part of the alumni, we actually also envision you having opportunities to participate in delivering future sessions or mentoring other people, once you become the master of doing this yourself. So lots of exciting things, I think, for building your career. And it's especially important for anybody that does want to get either to the CCO, Chief Customer Officer role, or a Chief Executive role themselves. I can't think of a better path to do it than to be one who comes up with strategic programs to mobilize your customers to drive customer-led growth.
Yeah, I mean, this is Marie. I think it sounds great. I hope to be part of this. I just have to get buy-in from my new manager, but I think it's a great opportunity for us all to really tie into those C-suite objectives and show the impact.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Anytime you can get with other people who are like-minded with the same goals and you all share and collaborate, how can you lose? It's a great opportunity.
I see Abby just posted, same, need buy-in from CMO, but very interested. Steve Woodward, looking forward to hearing more about this. You guys know how to reach us, Jeff@slap5.com or Bill@c4ce.com.